As Palworld keeps releasing more and more late game content, knowing how to optimize your pal's potential is becoming all the more important. In this video, I'll show you everything I've learned about making the strongest pals possible inside of the game from my hundreds of hours of crafting these overpowered teams. There's a lot to cover surrounding this topic, so I'll be using the Jetragon project I'm working on to help explain how my perfect pals came to be. Without further ado, let's go over how you can help your pals reach their max potential in the fastest way possible. The first and most important thing I'll talk about is breeding. Just to get the basics out of the way first, to get any pal you're looking for from breeding, just go to Genshin Lab. It's the first link in the description, and it'll show you every breeding combo in the game with a results-oriented search option for the pal you're looking for. For the breeding stage, you're going to want to focus on two main things: IVs and passive traits. I'll start with IVs. IVs work very similarly to how they work in Pokemon. They're hidden attributes your pal has that determine how strong their base stats are. Every method I'm about to talk about to make your pal stronger in this video works on a percentage, so starting out with the best base stats possible is very valuable. Before the most recent update adding the raid bosses, players used to have to use mods to see IVs on their pals. But now with Ancient Civilization cores which drop from any tier of Belnoir, you can craft the ability glasses. These ability glasses allow you to see the IVs of any friendly or wild pal as long as they're in one of your 2 accessory slots. Now that you know how to check IVs, let's go over how to get the best IVs possible for your overpowered pals. I recommend just mass catching the pal until you have an IV of each stat that is over 80. Here's why. From the Belnoir Libero and Ultra Belnoir Libero boss fight, you will get IV fruits. These IVs can come for any of the stats, including HP, attack, or defense, and will buff your pal by 10 points. This is why technically if you just want one version of a really good pal, you could just brute force it with good traits, but I would recommend getting the parents with good IVs because if you want to make multiple of a certain pal, you'd rather the parents have good IVs so you don't have to use fruits to buff every individual pal. I made this mistake recently with my Astegon army, and I regret it still. Also, just to be clear, IVs pass down very similarly to how traits pass down. There's also technically mutations, but they're pretty much useless because they only buff your stats by 1 or 2, and getting a fruit would just save you so much time. So just to summarize, make sure to have IVs on the parents instead of just making sure the IVs on the child are good if you're planning on making multiple of a really good pal. And don't waste your time looking for 100 IV pals. Getting an 80 plus IV pal and finishing it off with fruits before you start the breed line is totally fine. You'll even notice in the background of the video, the Jetragons that I'm breeding don't have 100 IVs. They have somewhere in the 80 to 90 range, and I'm just going to use fruits to max out the parents that have the full traits before I finally breed for the perfect ones. I'll only need one 100 IV pal for each stat anyway, so it's going to be very efficient and I'm not going to need that many fruits. Building off of that, let's talk about how to get the actual traits you want on your pals. This section is actually the main reason I made this video because there's so many misconceptions online that it's actually insane to me. Here's the main things you need to focus on when you're trying to get pal traits fast. Having extra traits that you don't want on the parent breeders will make your chance of getting a perfect pal so much worse. Reducing the number of unwanted traits on your parent breeders is the absolute top priority. Here's an example. If you have 2 breeding pairs, one of which having 3 perfect traits and the other one having the 4th perfect trait, compared to a line that has 3 perfect traits on one parent and then 2 perfect traits and an unwanted trait on the other parent, the first option would win by a landslide. This is because the likelihood of getting an unwanted trait would be significantly lower because the only way you could get one of those is through a mutation. While mutations can be pretty common, it's definitely less common than having one of the unwanted traits on a parent. A lot of people online will also say something like having 2 on one parent and 2 on the other parent is much better than everything else. I really don't think this is the case based on my testing. It might make a slight difference, but really the main point that you need to be focusing on is not having the unwanted traits. The reality is, even if using 2 on one and 2 on the other one is slightly more effective, it's not really going to matter because you'll get what you're looking for pretty quickly either way, and you need a lot of spare pals to condense later in this project you're doing anyway. If you're curious how to even get the traits on your breeders in the first place, here's my advice. It completely depends on the abundance of the pal you're breeding. For example, if you're trying to get a Gobfin with perfect traits, go catch a bunch of Gobfins, get the traits you're looking for individually, and combine all the traits onto one Gobfin through breeding. If you're doing something more difficult like Jetragon, you're gonna have to rely on mutations. Catching the pal every 30 minutes in the wild simply isn't efficient enough. It's simply easier to let a mass amount breed and finally find the trait you're looking for eventually. Here's my advice on how to get the most mutations possible with your lines. Make your breeding pair better have as little amount of traits as possible so there's more open spaces to fill in with random traits. For example, it's much better to breed 2 pals with 0 passive traits than to breed 2 pals that are stacked to the brim with 4 traits each. This is literally the only optimization you can do to find mutations through breeding. It is a completely luck-based thing, but at least you'll be getting a lot of spare pals to condense with later in the project doing this as well. Also, just one more quick clarification because I'm seeing this online a lot too. You can't get alpha pals from breeding down. They only added alpha pals in random wild eggs. It's not a thing you can get by breeding. I don't know why people keep saying this, that it's super rare or whatever. I think they're just messing around. Don't fall for this. You're not going to find them by breeding. I've not found a single one, and I've bred over 1,000 pals in the past 2 weeks. With how to set up the IVs and traits for your breed lines out of the way, let's get into condensing. Condensing is the most important part of this process by a landslide. Benefits from having a fully condensed pal include having significantly better base stats, a significantly improved pal ability, and an added level to your work suitability. Since it takes 116 pals to fully condense 1 pal, here's how I recommend doing this efficiently. Yet again, this boils down to the abundance of the pal that you're trying to make a perfect version of. If the pal you're going for is common enough to where you think it's worth catching 116 of it, make sure to bring a Ring of Mercy to save yourself so much time. Ring of Mercy acts sort of like False Swipe from Pokemon, where it won't let you kill a pal, but it will let you put it to 1 HP. This is the most effective way to catch a mass quantity of pals. If the pal isn't super common on the map, you might be better off just letting the breeding do the work. This will require a crap ton of cakes. Here's how I farm them with ease. Thank you again to all the commenters who helped me with sorting this out. So here's how you do it. Start by going to the black markets here on the map and killing it to get the gold drop. He can be a little tough, but if you're at the point in the game where you're going for perfect pals, I'd expect you to be able to take this out pretty easily. Once you take it out and get the ridiculous amount of gold it drops, about 10,000 each time, fly up to the desert, and once you see the desert word pop up on screen, fly back to where you killed the markets here and it will be respawned. You can cycle killing it like this as many times as you want, and you can get as much gold as you want using this method. Now that you have all the gold you could ever dream of, go to the small settlement here and find the red wandering merchant right here in the area. He will sell you everything you need for cakes besides honey. I mean, you also have to put the wheat in the mill, but that's not a big deal. Put a bunch of bee guards in your base to farm the honey and craft as many cakes as you're ever going to need with Yormotide Ignis. One more issue you might run into during these projects is running out of room in your box. Just condense your bad pals together and use them later in higher tier condensations for your actual good pals. This way you save about 80% of the room you would be wasting otherwise. The next step of making a perfect pal is buffing it with souls and the Statue of Power. The reward for using the Statue of Power to buff pals with souls is massive, as it gives a 30% attack, health, defense, and work speed buff. It just depends on what you pick. Here's the most efficient way to get any type of soul. Simply breed together Anubises or Necromuses and you'll get large pal souls whenever you butcher them after you hatch them. If you're trying to decide which one you want to use, Necromus is better if you're looking for pal metal ingots as a secondary resource, and Anubis is better if you're looking for bones as a secondary resource. I personally prefer Anubis because I just think getting pal metal ingots is really easy after the new ore mining station was added. I'm also doing Anubis because I'm secretly working on making a perfect work speed Anubis in the background of my other projects, so this kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone for me. Once you get the large pal souls from Necromus or Anubis, simply go to the crusher and convert those large pal souls into 2 medium souls or 4 small souls to fit whatever needs you have at the Statue of Power. Passive abilities like Godfins or Ragnarhawks, where they just buff damage of a player or change the typing of a player's attack, don't get buffed from souls. But Tanzi's ability like the Assault Rifle or Relaxaurus with the missiles do get buffed with attack souls. The general rule to figure out if souls are going to buff your pal's ability are if your pal is actually doing it, then it's probably getting buffed by souls, and if it's letting your human be buffed, then it's probably not getting buffed by souls. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip over skill fruits and team compositions for this video. If you want a more advanced combat guide and team building guide, I'll make one. I just don't have time to put all of it into one video. The final step to making an overpowered pal is getting it to level 50. This can be a pain in the ass, but they've recently released some things that are really useful, and I'll talk about them here. Training manuals come in multiple sizes and are dropped from dungeons, dropped from Belanoir raid bosses, and a few other chests around the map like the sanctuaries. They come in multiple sizes from, I believe, medium to extra large, and the extra large training manuals are a great way to level your pals fast. On top of dropping extra large training manuals, Belanoir also drops training crystals, which level your pal up once immediately. The way I personally level up my pals is fighting Marcus and Phalaris with an Azu robe on repeat. It's very efficient because he's a pretty easy boss to take down and he gives a lot of XP. Farming Marcus and Phalaris might seem like it's expensive based on the ammo you have to spend to beat him, but remember, you have unlimited gold now, which means you also have unlimited ammo. Well, that's it. That's how you get the perfect traits, perfect IVs, fully condensed, max soul buffed, and max level pelled as easy as possible. I hope you found this guide useful. There's so many steps to making the perfect pels and so many misconceptions online about where to start and what to go for, so I hope this helped. If this channel hits 1200 subs before May, I'll add no breeding as an extra challenge to the hardcore for me and my pals playthrough that I'm starting soon. Thanks for all the recent support. This has been Jace, and I'll see you guys next time.